What's up everyone, welcome back to another video, and I'm still recovering from the protests in Serbia, which were ridiculously big. In this video I'm going to show you 3 mixing tips and tricks which I mostly use always in my tracks to increase the sound quality of them. I'm going to start with the low end, and the only thing that I apply on the kick and the bass is the compression with Suit 2. So I'm selecting from the lowest frequencies up to 200, 250, and this way, because the kick is the element that is made from the sine wave, and the characteristics of the sine wave is that it can be present at only one frequency at a time, and by applying the pitch on the sine wave, we have kind of constantly moving frequency or one harmonic on the kick. Even when it reaches the low end, it's kind of moving always downwards, and that way it's kind of really hard to specifically find the frequency that is disturbing me. And the best way to solve this is that we use Suit 2 because it's a spectral plugin. It's going to analyze the FFT or the signal. It's going to find the resonance, and specifically, you don't need to compress only one frequency. It's going to search for that resonance, and it's going to follow it up and compress or suppress as much as you set it to. So I have the kick and bass going to this group. And also, when the bassline notes are changing, we can see that second and third harmonic are jumping out a little bit, and they get a little bit more louder than they're supposed to. And the Suit 2 is compressing that together. Now, if you play on solo, if I A/B it, most likely you won't feel the difference, but in the whole track, like, the effect of applying Suit 2 in the low end area, it's that it's gonna sound like they are paired together. They are one sequence, and without it, it's like kick is doing its own job and the bassline is doing its own job. So somehow they're gonna get paired, and they're gonna sound a little bit more tighter and closer together, and they're gonna work as a one unit instead of hearing two of them separately. If you like this type of the effect, as I like in specifically this track, then something similar to this is very, very helpful. Now, the second thing is that what I apply on my top end, all the groups of all the hi-hats and loops on top of the kick and the bass. Since we are using mostly digital samples like the hi-hats or the loops whatsoever, and since we are working digitally, they are really high with the transient, and the transients on hi-hats in most cases are really, really high. So by layering many of these layers of the hi-hats, we're gonna get in every single moment like super high transient with another super high transient, and it's going to be creating like one huge transient. In my opinion, I really love softening them up and creating this type of the analog feeling. Since all the hardware gear like transformers, or let's say the tubes, when you pass the signals like digital files through them, they won't be able to handle this kind of a fast information, and they're going to provide a sounding effect like the transient, or like there's kind of softening up of the high frequencies, and also we won't be able to hear all these highest frequencies as well. I like to kind of create something in between, and there's something that's called Crest factor, where there's a difference between the peaks and RMS, and in most cases on the hi-hats it's a really big difference. So by applying a saturation or any type of the clippers, or let's say the limiter, we can reduce the amount of power of the peaks, and that way create a kind of softer effect. On my hi-hats, I always put like invisible limiter. I sometimes use standard clips, sometimes I will use Psytrance, sometimes I will use Brainworks clipper, it really doesn't matter. And as well, I have the Suit 2 just to collect all these resonances on top. Hi-hats, they happen really fast and they stop working really fast, so they have a high burst of energy and they release it really, really fast. So I believe that Suit 2 is a very, very good for this. Again, there's another plugin which is called the Spectral Dynamics, which was my first one, Spectral Dynamic EQ or Spectral Dynamic plugin that I was using. But I think that interface of Suit 2 is kind of way easier, as they just simplified the use of it, while in Melodies production and Spectral Dynamic, it's very, very detailed, and I think you can do way more detailed work. So if you need more details, more professional, then definitely Spectral Dynamics. But if you want something that's going to be fast and easy to use, then I would choose Suit 2. Now I have the Invisible Limiter G2, which I'm just reducing the ceiling, which is kind of a threshold, so I'm not allowing or limiting everything on minus 9.20 decibels in this case, and I'm gonna find that by moving this knob all the way down, I'm gonna find when it's gonna start oversaturating the whole sequence, and then I'm just bringing it backwards a little bit. What this does is it's gonna release or cut a lot of peaks from my top end, from my hi-hats and loops, and that way create a lot of space, and it's not gonna hit the master that hard. So it's a kind of specific type of the effect. You might like it, you might don't, but it's something that I really like to when we have so many of the information with the super high leads and everything, and then we have all these super high frequency transients and the hi-hats playing on top of it. And I honestly believe that reducing or like burning out the peaks on specifically on all the loops beside the snare and the open hat is something that's creating an amazing effect. So as I already said, I'm gonna put everything to this group inside of the open hat and the snare, because I honestly believe that the transients or the punch on the snare and open hat are very important. So I might create a subgroup like the hi-hats, put everything except the snare and the open hat on that group, and then apply this kind of techniques that I just showed you. And the third tip, which I always use, is that I have a full group with all the leads in my tracks. And I love applying the Pro C2, and I'm gonna compress on them only what's in the middle. So when you drop in the Pro C2, you have the stereo link over here, select the mid, which is selected by default, and then just move this stereo link all the way on the right, as this way we're gonna compress only what's in the middle. And I wanna do that since we have the kick and the bass, which have and use the most power they have. They are mostly playing in the middle, even though I have the stereo information on the kick and the bass, but it's really small. As we are able to see, they are playing mostly in the middle. So they occupy a lot of space in the middle, and there's not much space in the middle anymore. So this is why I'm kind of suppressing or compressing everything that's in the middle on my leads, while I keep everything that's on side completely intact, and that way I compensate the dynamic range. Like I don't have any compression or limitation on the side, as that way we're gonna hear like there's a lot of movement, and I'm gonna avoid to have like over compressed track by keeping the side not compressed and keep compressing everything in middle, because it might interfere with the kick and the bass. And after it goes to the mastering process, we might have problems of pushing a track to a certain level. So compressing the mids, compressing what's mono on your channel, and that way allowing more space to increase the level of your masters at the end, and not touching the side, is something which I find is a compromise to have this kind of compressed but not over compressed effect on my tracks. So these were my 3 favorite tricks that I mostly use to increase the sound or mixing on my tracks. Please let me know in comments what you think about it. Subscribe, and see you soon with another video. Bye.